Here we are in Newport Beach at Pelican Hill Resort, about to drive the all-new 2025 Volvo EX90 electric family SUV. This is the top of the line for Volvo. It is their new flagship electric vehicle. It's going to hit the market in late 2024, but we're going to drive it before then and give you our feedback. Let's check it out. Driving the all-new Volvo EX90, which Volvo says is the quietest interior they've ever created. And after having some seat time in this vehicle, I think I believe it. It is very quiet. Unfortunately, because there's no noise coming from traditional places like engines and exhaust notes, you are more aware of wind noise coming off the mirrors or tire slap and tire noises from these summer performance tires that are apparently going to be replaced by all-season, less performance-oriented tires when they come to the country as production models. These early test vehicles we're driving right now, there's a surprising number of slaps and tire roars that we hear because there's otherwise such a quiet cabin. It's the upside and downside of having a quiet cabin. This vehicle has two drivetrains. It's got the twin motor and the twin motor performance drivetrain. The base twin motor makes 402 horsepower and the twin motor performance makes 510 horsepower. 0 to 60 time is 4.7 seconds or 5.7 seconds. You can probably figure out which one is which. Starting price for this car is right at $80,000 for the most basic model, the Plus trim. And then if you go up to the Ultra trim, it goes to $84,995. And if you go from the twin motor to the twin motor performance, then you just bracket everything up $5,000. So you're talking an $80,000 to $90,000 luxury electric three-row SUV. That's a lot of money. There's a lot of other vehicles you can get, electric or not, for that kind of money. So it's something you want to think about. I think this vehicle has a lot of good luxury features, and it's certainly got a lot of the Volvo safety tech that you come to expect from a brand like this. I'm not as convinced about some of the areas like the interior materials. They seem completely fine at first glance, but I feel like if you look a little closer, maybe they aren't quite as plush as you'd want for that kind of money. And there's a certain amount of creative design and control decisions, let's call it that this car exhibits. Everything from only having dedicated buttons for 2 of the 4 windows and having to use a third one to toggle between the front and rear windows, to having to use 5 steps through the central touchscreen to get to changing the steering or suspension firmness from soft to firm. And there are only 2 choices. It's one or the other. The car definitely has some quirks, some unconventional control components that may or may not resonate with you. With regard to ride quality, which is offered in either firm or soft, there is no in between, this vehicle rides on either 20, 21, or 22-inch wheels. And we're on the 22-inch wheels for this model. And it seems like beyond the tire slap that was mentioned, there's also just an overly stiffness to the ride quality, especially in firm mode for the suspension. It's really not a useful setting. You're going to upset the chassis more than actually control it if you're trying to do that and going around corners in that firm setting. You really don't want to use it, and ride quality definitely suffers. Maybe it'd be better with one of the smaller tire and wheel packages, but with the larger wheels, you really aren't going to be able to utilize that setting. The primary control interface in the EX90 is a 14-inch vertically oriented touchscreen right here in the center of the dash. There's also a 9-inch gauge cluster right in front of the driver, just past the steering wheel. The gauge cluster moves with the wheel, so you can always be sure you're going to see it clearly. But it is kind of small. You can imagine that 9 inches doesn't sound that big, and it doesn't look that big, especially in a modern premium vehicle. You do have several settings you can use. There's a page scrolling system where you can look at either navigation or have a simple setting where it's just speed. The central touchscreen controls let you access a wide variety of settings, but in more of this minimalist approach that Volvo is using, a lot of these things are combined with more typically manual or dedicated controls. For instance, you can't adjust the steering wheel or the exterior mirrors unless you dive into several steps of the 14-inch touchscreen display. Theoretically, you're going to do that once as the owner, and you're not going to have to do that again. And it's going to be paired to your phone as a key, which is one of the technologies that this car does offer. But as someone who may want to adjust the mirror more often, that's going to be kind of annoying to have to dig into there just to make simple steering wheel or mirror adjustments. Another combined control for the EX90 is the glove box release, which is not a typical latch or button right on the glove box door, but a release button, again, within the 14-inch touchscreen control. These are the kind of things that worry me, because if the screen for some reason is acting up, what are you going to do if you have something in the glove box, or really a whole wide range of controls that you can't make because the screen may be having problems? The good news is that Volvo has recognized the need to potentially reset the screen, and they've given you an easy way to do it. They've got a dedicated volume knob here in the center console. Kudos for that, first of all. Dedicated volume knobs are still appreciated in today's world. But you can hold that knob down. There's a button element, and if you push down on the knob and hold it for 30 seconds, it will reset the infotainment system and hopefully get you back to controlling the things that you can't otherwise control without that screen operating. While the technology in these cars can be tricky, it also can have a lot of great benefits and features. For instance, this Google-based system means you have access to all of Google services, Google Play, and even Google Voice. You can ask the car to make adjustments for you without ever using any of the controls, whether that's navigation, climate, or audio. Simply say, "Hey Google, direct me to Pelican Hill Resort."
The resort at Pelican Hill is 13 minutes from your location by car in light traffic.
Dynamically, the EX90 feels, well, like most electric vehicles. That means instant torque, extremely refined drivetrain, there is no NVH, and again, very quiet at highway speeds, hopefully not upset by tire noise if they upgrade these tires to all seasons when they go on sale in the US compared to these test models we're driving now. I think most people buying this vehicle are expecting exactly those traits. They're not going to be worried about maybe a heavy feel, which this car weighs between 5,500 and 6,100 pounds, depending on which model and which engine you get. In fact, this is a 3-row SUV, and that means it's got plenty of room in the first 2 rows. Third row, maybe a little tight for full-sized humans. Tried it out, and if you're approaching 6 feet, you're not going to be happy back there. The seating in general is quite comfortable, though I'm surprised a vehicle at this price point does not include ventilated front seats, at least, only heated in the case of this ultra top trim package we're in right now. The other thing to note about this Volvo EX90 is that it's got a very advanced Bowers & Wilkins audio system. It's got about 25 different channels and a whole lot of amplification, and it was apparently installed early in the development of the vehicle, thus knowing just where to place the speakers for maximum sound imaging. And, well, it does sound pretty good. Performance-oriented drivers can use a performance all-wheel drive setting in this vehicle, which takes advantage of torque vectoring. I think it's mostly oriented toward the rear axle and the rear motor, but it will help direct the car using power from left to right to help follow through with steering input, theoretically improve the handling response of the vehicle. But that kind of setting, and really any kind of aggressive setting, is going to cut down on range, and in this vehicle, range is going to be somewhere around 300 miles. We didn't go anywhere near that. We might have driven about 100 and 150 miles in today's driving loop, but we've only got 85 left. So maybe it was aggressively driven, maybe it was the amount of elevation changes we had, but as is with most electric vehicles, your range may vary. After a day of driving the all-new 2025 Volvo EX90, we've got a good sense of what it's going to mean for the brand. It's their top-line flagship, and it really does have a luxurious and refined feel. Super quiet cabin, great acceleration, of course, and a fair amount of room and really comfortable seats. If you're a family shopper looking for an electric vehicle to carry the whole crew, this one might work for you. But before you buy, you really should get to the dealership and check out all of its control interfaces. There are some quirks, there are some unconventional control elements, and they may or may not work for you. It'll hit showrooms at the end of this year. Be sure to check it out at your local dealership if you're into electric vehicles, luxury vehicles, and family vehicles. Combines all three of those features in a very effective way.